Hello, everybody. We're here live at Facebook, all my friends and family. And joining me today is my wonderful colleague and Extra Credits faculty expert, Mike Staver, and also Bishop Warner Brown. So I would like to introduce everybody. We're trying to start to get the feed going. We have our lovely moderator, Paul, with us as well. Paul, if you just want to wave and let us say hi to everybody.
Hello.
Excellent. So as we're trying to get Facebook up and going, I'm going to introduce Mike. So Mike is an expert on leadership, and he's influenced over 250,000 people in ways that not only transform the way they think, but the action that they take to get the results they need. Celebrated author of 2 books, Leadership Isn't for Cowards, and Do You Know How to Shut Up? With a master's degree in counseling psychology and a bachelor's degree in business administration, he understands the importance of results and can assist you and your organization in the successful pursuit of your objectives and goals. Mike's work has also appeared in the Washington Post, USA Today, and also in Training and Development magazine. I'm very honored and excited to welcome Mike as part of the faculty here at Extra Credits.
Being a great leader is a choice. Being a great leader is a mission. But being a great leader is not for the faint of heart. The instant you accept the responsibility of leadership, you begin messing with people's lives. And the question is, how do you do that without messing up people's lives? How do you influence them in such a way that they're better because they wake up in the morning and follow you? I'm Mike Staver, and I've spent years working with leaders in industries around the world to help them confront their realities, zero in on their fears, take action in spite of those fears, and start making the quick decisions necessary to achieve outstanding results. The key to all of that rests in your willingness to fully engage in the process of learning while you lead. Not just because it's a good idea or someone told you to, but because it is the key to driving the kind of influence necessary for your followers to reach and even exceed their potential. That's what messing with people's lives is really all about. Understanding their needs and adjusting your behavior to meet their performance needs. But who has the time for that? I mean, let's face it, most of us are going 1,000,000 miles an hour with our hair on fire every day. Staver On Demand is the solution to the challenge of high return on investment development. At least our vision for Staver On Demand is to be able to bring to leaders very compact, incremental, immediately applicable things they can do to have an impact on people's lives. My online virtual training communication system combines highly engaging, interactive, video-based lessons, real-time testing and tracking capabilities, and state-of-the-art accountability features to help leaders get answers to the most important question they will ever ask. Why should a person follow you? It features honest, memorable, and actionable lessons, stories, and tips. I will virtually and personally teach developing leaders one-on-one how to make their leadership role more effective. But I won't make it so serious that they forget to celebrate the amazing privilege of leading. 24-hour-a-day access to my content and coaching delivered on your mobile device or your computer allows you to get the learning you need when you need it. Content that easily translates into behavior change and real-world usefulness connects you to your followers quicker and builds your credibility faster. Staver On Demand. Be courageous. Get started today.
I figured out how to do it.
And we're back.
Hi, everybody. Well, that was a quick introduction for my wonderful Mr. Mike Staver. And now I'd like to introduce you to Bishop Warner Brown. As a coach, he specializes in coaching techniques, helpful assignments to offer a highly personalized program tailored to you. With compassion and understanding, he will work with you to help you build on your strengths and attain the personal goals you are truly committed to achieving. Bishop Brown brings many years of experience to his coaching as a leader and supervisor of leaders with religious and nonprofit organizations, including funeral directors. He has led small, medium, and large congregations as the lead pastor. As a superintendent, he supervised over 50 congregations and their pastors, then was elected as bishop and given the privilege of leading in succession 2 multi-state regions of several hundred congregations each. His colleague bishops also selected him to serve as a president of the Council of Bishops. And Bishop Brown is currently looking at becoming a member here at Extra Credits as the faculty. Welcome, Bishop Brown.
Thank you very much, Lisa. It's a joy to be with you and Mike this morning.
Fantastic. Well, as people are joining in, I want to lead the conversation off because we always talk about leadership in turbulent times and change. And Mike, you're the authority there when it comes to that. So I want to add, the first thing that I really want to ask you is they've coined you the rebel with a cause. So having said that, what is your cause?
The big thing I'm really focused on is this notion of helping leaders lead courageously and make decisions. You know, our brains are against us, really. Since the day we were born, our brains have been trying to keep us safe and secure and insulated. And unfortunately, you can't really lead in a space if you're not willing to move in toward what you're uncomfortable with. And so I've really committed my life to helping people of influence, whether they have direct reports or not, to lean toward the things that make them uncomfortable so that they can expand their view of the world, themselves, and those that they influence.
And so, Bishop, how does that play into the role that you actively have? I mean, I know you're semi-retired, but over the years, what's your feeling on that?
That is a really exact a match for what I've experienced. A part of my life to become a leader, I had to take responsibility for what I was dealing with, own the places where I needed to accept the screw-ups are my responsibility, and what do I need to learn to go forward and help others go forward? And so that people really trust that I have bought into the mission, to the goal we have at hand. And I genuinely care about them and their success too.
Yeah, I think being genuine is something that both of you gentlemen have very much in common.
Oh, thank you.
And I truly believe that in order for you to become a true influencer in a space, you have to be genuine. And people need to understand that you really do care and that you are compassionate about them. And I think leaders of organizations, and whether they're an HR leader or they're a funeral director, truly need to have their best people's interests at heart.
Right. And it's so difficult sometimes because we get so busy doing the stuff we think we're charged to do with the P&L or helping people or selling to customers, that sometimes it's easy to lose our center, our true north, I guess you could say, when it's really about the impact we're having on human beings first. And then through that impact, we have an impact on profits and customers and so forth.
Absolutely. So for those of you who are just tuning in to us, this is Mike Staver, the author of Leadership Isn't for Cowards, and Bishop Warner Brown, celebrated pastor, semi-retired now, and is now moving into a new career change, Pastor?
Yes, my colleagues are celebrating that. I'm hoping to help leaders really be the best they can be. Engaging pastors, business leaders, nonprofit organization leaders, funeral directors in really how to engage and serve their clients as best they possibly can, to be their best selves.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. So, Mike, if you were to tell our listeners what are the top 3 steps that would allow them to have effective execution, what would that be?
Well, first, clarity. I mean, one of the things that amazes me is how often people don't have clarity. So what is the mission? What are the expectations? What is it that we're really after? So many people, I was just on a call just a few minutes ago with the CEO, and my encouragement to him was, let's get clarity about what the outcome needs to be. So that's first. Secondly, I think, is having a world of kind and compassionate accountability. You know, in a lot of organizations, people think accountability is only for the weak and failing, or it's negative, or it's a punishment. And I think it's a benefit of employment. I mean, I don't want to work for somebody who doesn't want to hold me accountable. Accountability is just asking questions to verify that what I committed to, I'm actually doing. I mean, I think it's that simple. And then the third thing is recognition, the extent to which I care enough about you to pay attention to what you're doing so that I can recognize the person that you are and the character traits that you have that have driven you to win the way you've you've been winning. I think if you can take clarity of expectation and outcome, match that with good, rigorous, compassionate accountability, and then personal recognition, I think you're on your way.
Yeah. And do you have something to add to that, Bishop?
I fully support what Mike is saying. In many ways, compassion and accountability is mutual support. It's your way of being in team with the person and helping them lead, and to make sure your mutual expectations are understood and followed through.
Yeah. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, but I would say many leaders today, it doesn't matter if they're in the executive C-suite or they're, a mid-level manager, forget that.
That's right.
Yes.
They do forget that.
Yeah.
And beyond that, what they forget, I was just told a story this morning on my first coaching call this morning of an executive who brought a manager in to have a conversation about a problem in the department, and the setup of the room was like an inquisition. It wasn't like what you're talking about, Warner, when you talk about this sort of working together to accomplish something. It was me against you. It was accusatory. And of course, what did the manager do? The manager walked out and decided they wanted to quit. Thank God, I don't think they're going to, but there was nothing compassionate or accountable about that. It was all, you're to blame. You need to fix your problem. So that's a problem.
Very much.
I agree. I've found that trust is really the heart of success of any leader and any organization. Yeah. And if that relationship isn't that folks know you genuinely care about them, you genuinely care about the work you've agreed to do, then they aren't going to trust you and they aren't going to buy in.
That's right.
Yeah, and if they don't buy in, then what's the point?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I would agree. So do you think that, when you're trying to influence and lead people, do you think that you can over communicate, Mike?
That's a great question. I certainly think you can over communicate the wrong stuff. And I think that you can over communicate in the wrong channel. So for instance, my 25-year-old, if I call him on the phone one time, he considers that over communicating. If I send him a text, that's not. I mean, we can text for 15 minutes. So I see communication as the extent to which it's on purpose, first of all. Are we communicating with some sense of purpose? And then secondly, is it delivered in a way that the receiver can most hear it, and not delivered in the way that I prefer to give it? I need to be sensitive to and aware of how you want to receive communication, both technically, but more important, intentionally from me, so that you're prepared to receive it. And that's really, isn't it, Warner, what the pastorate's all about and what your life has been committed to, is how do I deliver an important message so you can hear it?
Exactly. And many times the key thing is the listening and not what you're wanting to communicate. And you have to ask yourself the question sometimes, why am I talking?
Yes, right.
I need to be listening to make sure I really understand what's important to this person and what they're trying to say.
And it's unfortunately for me, when I'm doing a keynote, I sometimes ask myself, why am I talking? But that's a question beyond this show, I'm afraid.
Is that when your other book comes into play?
Yes. Do you know when to shut up? Although I did say, this is a funny, quick anecdote. I used to have a group of CEOs that met with me where I live in Florida every year. And one year, there were only 10 of them. And one year they came back to me and said, we'd like to give you some feedback. And I said, what is it? They said, we think you should impose a penalty on us for every time you advise us and we don't do what you suggest and it blows up in our face. I said, that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
And I think the opposite of that should be is companies should bring in reward programs based on that philosophy.
Yes, exactly. Exactly right.
So listening, we talked about listening and how important that is. And I know Dr. Tony Alessandro, who's a member of the faculty here, who talks all the time about the DISC behaviorals and truly understanding that who is the other person on the other side and how do you modify your communication to make sure that they're listening and they understand in a way that makes sense to them. That's really important. But as funeral directors, I mean, listening, I would think would be a key component to their compassion and to their job.
Very definitely. That funeral directors meet people at one of the lowest moments in their life. They're hurting and they need to know somebody cares about them and somebody can hear what they're saying
Yeah.
beyond the anger and the frustration and the tears that they may be expressing, but to listen deeply, to really hear what's on their hearts and to embrace them emotionally.
Yeah. Mike, you work with funeral directors all the time. So what is the one challenge that they're often faced with that they tell you about?
They're faced with the challenge between the need to run a business that's profitable and that keeps them in business and to do what's right for the family. You know, there's a lot of pressure in the industry, and I haven't really worked with them in a while, but my experience when we worked with several of the largest was that they have a conflict, because on the one hand, they've got to drive margin and they've got to drive revenue and they've got to keep the doors open, but they also have to do what's in the best interest of the family. And that's a difficult thing because, you know, to your point, Warner, they are compassionate and care, but there are certain elements of the industry that drive revenue and profit. And that's a difficult thing to do. And it's a philosophical challenge for some of them, right? I mean, what am I really in the business of doing here? Becomes challenging. But I think that's the biggest. And not only that, but their business, contrary to popular opinion, is being contracted and compressed by foreign competition and other things coming in. And we still have families to serve. They still have people to care about. But, you know, even the Chinese are in the game, and a lot of people are putting pressure on the business.
And they're caught between cost compression, rising costs, and the limits on what they can do in terms of carving out their profit.
That's right.
Do you think that that's, when it comes to listening, I mean, we're talking about funeral directors. Now let's talk a little bit more about HR departments and what roles they play in when it comes to listening to their workforce and, you know, the turbulent changes that are occurring now within their leadership. And I do believe that leadership and, effective ways to grow their organization and their business doesn't just come from the top brass. It comes from throughout. And I think maybe even more importantly, right from the HR department. Would you agree with that?
Well, and probably even more than the HR department, from just your relationships with your colleagues on the front line, wherever that is. You know, HR, while more and more a seat at the executive table, unfortunately, is often on the front end. Do we train them? Do we develop them? What do we do to help? And then on the back end, when we have to say goodbye to them. So the work is really driven through what are we doing to raise the collective bar so that our employees feel more certain and feel more significant to the enterprise? And what do we provide for them? And it's one of the things you're doing, Lisa, with Extra Credits is how do we help these organizations drive certainty and significance so that, you know, over 30%, if you can imagine this, over 30% of employees in America are disengaged or actively disengaged while at work. Now, if you think about that, if you're disengaged, that's one thing. I'm hanging out. In fact, let's just face it, there might be some people watching this right now who ought to be working, but we're glad you're watching, who are disengaged. And then but then there's another group, think about this, that are actively disengaged. That means they're at work looking for ways not to do their jobs. And so I think your work at Extra Credits and Warner, your work and that kind of thing is all about how we help people re-engage so that they feel like they have an impact and have intentionality when they show up to work.
Absolutely.
HR department has one of the difficult challenges because they have a responsibility to the organization. They have practices and policies they have to implement. But it's key that those that work for that organization see HR as an asset and not an adversary. Right. And getting to that place when people are wondering how we disengage and so forth. You know, under an ideal situation, HR can be in a place that we can help people through training and through their practices get connected in a place that fits them. And if it's not the present job, how do we do an outplacement that's a win-win and not just say, oh, I've been fired.
Right.
Very good. Very good. So, Paul, I know that you're there. Do we have any questions from the audience from either the virtual room where people are sitting and watching this or from Facebook right now?
We do. For Mike, we have, what is the most important trait of a courageous leader?
There's so many of them. I think there's probably a tie, but if I was forced, I would say curiosity. one of the things that happens often is we get moved into a leadership position and somehow people lose sight of the fact that you were moved into that position, not because you have the answers, but that you ought to be better with the questions. And so I think developing a heart of curiosity that manifests itself in a behavior of asking good questions is the number one. And then a close second, if not tied, is personal awareness. I don't think horrified is an overstatement to say I'm horrified at how little personal awareness some people have. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I was on the phone with somebody and I said, look, this is how people perceive you. This is how people perceive you. And they said, I don't believe it. I'm like, well, the data would show otherwise. So I think the extent to which a person has a deep, spiritually profound sense of curiosity and then manifest that in questions, which requires a sense of personal awareness, is very important.
Bishop, what would you say?
I would fully agree, and I would add to that a spirit of willingness to learn, that curiosity that is addressing the places of what can I learn from this situation, and how can I put my life, my efforts to the service of the good, the common good.
Right. That's right. Right. And understanding that we're working with people first and objects and product and services later. Yes. That level of awareness manifests. And by the way, people are going to tell. You can't say we're all about the people, but then act all about the profit and the product.
Yes.
Back to the being genuine, right?
Right.
Absolutely. And so when you do one of your keynotes is leadership isn't for cowards. So can they expect to hear more of those traits from you when you're doing that presentation?
Yeah, we do the 3 things that prove you're never going to change a single thing in your life regardless. That's one of the things we talk about. And then the other thing we talk about are the 6 things you need to do as soon as you walk out of the building. I don't want it to, with all due respect to Chinese food, I really don't want my keynotes to be like Chinese food. You get full on it. You love it. It tastes great. An hour later, you're hungry again. Yeah. So, it's about practical application of concepts.
Yes.
And so there's some really good advice, Bishop Brown, for when you're doing your keynotes, because I know that you want to start to do more keynotes in the corporate market sector. And that's a fantastic way to look at it, actually. I've never ever heard of it described that way before. I don't know I'll ever be able to eat Chinese food again this year. That's it.
One of the things I'm discovering is how much similarity there is from my friends that work in the corporate world to the experiences I was having as a leader of pastors, of leaders of nonprofit organizations. Right. Many of the learnings we have in common, many of the issues we're dealing with are pretty much the same. Mm-hmm. And being able to talk through the elements, and one of the key elements is learning how to collaborate and to build on the relationships that are available to us.
And I love what you just said, Warner, about the relationships that are available to us. I think we spend too much time sometimes going to try to create relationships that are not available to us. Mm-hmm. And if we deal with the people who are, I don't know if this is true or not, but I never let the truth get in the way of a good story. I was once told that the Coast Guard teaches that you should swim. You should save the ones coming toward you first. If the Coast Guard didn't say it, it's still a great metaphor, because sometimes the relationships that we're engaged in already, to the point you just made, are the ones that can give us the greatest amount of influence without feeling like we have to go create or repair a bunch of others.
Yes. We can find our community that already exists, and often we can add value if we are intentional about sharing our gifts and thinking about what we can contribute. And
exactly
others
right.
will tell us.
Exactly.
Well, I would suspect, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Mike, but I would say why you are so successful is because of the relationships that you have built.
Right. And the relationships that I've avoided.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good
right. Point. We have to be very careful. It isn't just about being a speaker or a coach or pastor or a business owner like yourself, Lisa. It is I don't want to surround myself with people who artificially inflate me with helium. I want to be around people who speak the truth and love to me about what's really going on. But I also want to make sure that I'm insulated from the toxicity that can dilute my influence in some way. And I know, Bishop, that's something that you've spent your whole life doing, right? Is helping people figure out the stuff that works and the stuff that doesn't.
Yes, and recognizing, don't discount people.
Right.
You can build relationships with people if they have that common energy of wanting to be about something constructive, of wanting to bring their best to the table. You don't have to agree with them, but you can work together because you can find common ground and something that you share that's important. Right.
Yeah, I was watching last night the show Madam Secretary. I don't know if either one of you have ever watched it. Every now I love the show. And there was a really good example where, and I can't remember the two gentlemen's name, but the one gentleman goes over top of the public. They're looking for a public policy leader, and so he pitches a new prospect employee to the one gentleman and is unheard. So then he goes to the boss. He goes to the secretary and says, "Hey, oh, by the way," in a casual conversation. And of course she says, "Well, sure. Let me hear, make sure you tell so-and-so that he needs to come or she needs to come and get an interview." And then the gentleman that he bypassed is mad at him because now he didn't follow the chain of command. But in the end, what ends up happening is they work through it and they collaborate together and they overcome their differences and find a solution that is way better than it ever would have been before. Yes. And so I think sometimes just because you have a different point of view or you have a different strategic thought process, if you will, you can still come together and find a very valuable solution that works.
Right. Yes. Exactly right.
Yeah. Paul, are you there?
I am here.
And do we have another question for either gentleman?
Yes, we have one or two more. What is the first thing our viewers should do when this broadcast is over?
Oh, wow. I think they should go to Mike Staver. And if you show up the screen, Paul, at the very last screen in the PowerPoint presentation, and it's got everybody's links there, that would be great.
Certainly.
Right there at the bottom, and you can find everybody, and we'll show this again throughout the conversation, but connect with all of us on our social media feeds. That would be fantastic. And of course, if you're looking for continuing education and you're a funeral director or you're an HR professional or you're a professional as recertification credits, you can connect with Mike. If you could go back a slide, that would be fantastic. And you can download his ebook for free at Mike Staver ebook at episode number 1 and one more. And Mike is on, of course, Mike Staver at Extra Credits, and you can find out more about Mike, and there's a very personal message there for you. As well as, Warner, my understanding is you have your website up.
Yes, it's up. It's a work in progress, but it is up, and people can reach me through it.
Okay. And if you would just want to let Paul know what that is, and we'll pop that up real quick.
All right. Coaching at WarnerHBrownJr.com.
And so for those of you who are tuning in right now, while Paul gets that up, we're just talking a little bit about leadership, about compassion in today, about how do you become an influencer, and how do you earn continuing education? How do you become a master of lifelong learning? And were you able to get that up, Paul?
Yes, here it is right here.
Excellent. And so for those of you who are trying to connect with Warner, there's Warner's website as well.
Looks good, Warner. I like it.
So I have a question for both of you. And that question really is, what is the primary motivator for people?
Go ahead, Warner.
Wow. People are looking for engagement that genuinely somebody loves them, that there is caring, that they are valued, and recognizing the value that one has within themselves can give them the strength to engage and to accomplish anything they set their mind to.
That's powerful.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely true. And I also think people are generally motivated by different things, but I think most of us are moving away from a place where we're uncomfortable to a place where we're more comfortable. And that is either positive motivation or negative. Sometimes the discomfort that we find ourselves in is necessary discomfort because it prepares us for the next stage in life, for the next stage in our careers. But I think most people are moving from something towards something. And I'm always encouraging people to be very mindful of the fact that we're not just moving away from what's uncomfortable, but we need to be intentional about what we're moving toward and figure out what the motives are. Because if I'm moving away from something, I'm constantly looking over my back and I'll run right into a wall. If I'm looking forward and moving towards something. So I think this notion of significance and moving from what's uncomfortable to what's comfortable drives most people.
I would agree. Well, and there's lots of, if you are an avid reader, you'll read lots by many thought leaders, including yourself, that, comfort is complacent. When you push past your comfort zone, that's where things, and you can exceed in so many things that you never thought imagined before.
That's right. Yeah.
And so boundaries are also lines of distinction, correct?
Right.
And so when we talk about that, I know I've heard you say that there's often a misunderstanding about the nature and the use of of boundaries, Mike. So tell me a little bit more about that.
So back in the old days, a lot of years ago, I'm afraid, when I worked ran a division of a psychiatric hospital and had a practice, I used to say to families all the time, the measure of health is the degree to which we have healthy boundaries. Make no mistake, everybody has boundaries. They either have fluid boundaries where they can't stop inbound or external stuff, or they have rigid boundaries where they say, this is just the way I am. And so this notion of being able to have boundaries that are porous enough to rationally and with great health allow the good stuff in and the bad stuff out is very important. Unfortunately, what happens in some people's lives is they have boundaries that are reversed. They hold the good stuff out and the bad stuff in. When we don't forgive somebody, when we don't move forward past a point of pain in our life at some point. And so I think boundaries are necessary as long as they're not too rigid or not too open.
In many ways, in my mind, boundaries are one of the ways that we clarify who we are and how we protect our integrity.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so how would you say one could overcome the boundaries that they put into place? Do you have an example?
Yeah. I don't know that I want them to overcome them. I just want to make sure they're healthy.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like you want to make sure that when you evaluate the boundary, if a person says, I'm never going to talk to you again, that's a boundary. But if that boundary starts building thickness about any relationship, that's a problem. By the same token, if I keep going back and sticking my hand in the face of the same dog that bit me last time, and then I get mad at the dog for biting me, pretty soon it's not the dog's problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What's that saying? Once bitten, twice bitten, third, shame on me. There's this. I
think it's once. Yeah, I think it's once bitten, twice bitten, third rabies. Maybe I just made that up. I might have.
Bite me the first time, shame on you. Bite me the second time, shame on me.
Bite me.
That's it. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, Bishop, what are your plans now that you're semi-retired? I mean, I know you're starting this coaching practice and you're trying to grow your influence and your brand. You're building a brand around you. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, in building that brand, one of the things that have been important to me is working in organizations that make a difference, particularly with millennials. work in developing an international conference that we've developed working with young people. I'm looking forward to doing that again next year in Johannesburg, where young people through the church are coming together from all over the world to really work at their leadership and expressing their opinion, their voice, their leadership, so it's heard by our larger international church organization. That's something I was a part of founding and nurturing over these last 16 years.
Wow.
And so I'm eager to get engaged with them again in Johannesburg and help them move forward and see the next generation of leaders step forward. And so engaging in special projects like that, where I can help people discover their gifts, find their courage to step forward, take the risk necessary to discover leadership is possible, they can make a difference.
Right where they live, right? I mean,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
And helping teams be effective wherever they are. Helping leaders work as an effective team is empowering. And it feels good. And as you engage in that, everybody grows stronger.
And it helps avoid the complacency that you talked about earlier, Lisa, that, you know, if you're on a team and that team's on a mission, it's very hard for somebody to be, slacking off on that group. It brings together everything we've talked about today.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, some have said, Mike, that you have an uncanny ability to simplify complex issues. So do you think, Warner's talking a little bit about his influence and what he's going to be doing in Johannesburg. Would you say that uncanny ability has really been the driver, the catalyst behind your influence?
I think so. I mean, I'm not very smart, so that, I don't want to take a lot of credit because I had to make them simple for myself. So I make them simple for other people. I just, I don't know. I'm sure a lot of my speaker buddies and a lot of people out there in the world may think I oversimplify things. We have a lot of noise in our life. Stuff's coming at us all the time and people want to create all this complexity. And to me, things are pretty straightforward. And so I try to keep it as simple and applicable as possible so that people feel like they can make some incremental shift in their life or their work.
I think sometimes, too, the most simplest things are overlooked because we're always looking for the most complex, right?
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's a principle I'd like to share. If I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
My dad actually wrote a book called, I'm holding it right here, that says, "If I can do it, so can you." And he had 8th grade education and started a worldwide company. And, it's pretty straightforward.
Where do we buy that book, Mike?
I think it's on Amazon. If I can do it, so can you. He started the largest insurance restoration contracting business at the time. We just had his 90th birthday. We celebrated his 90th birthday 2 weeks ago. He's just a wonderful Southern gentleman, faith-based man who's done amazing things in the world. So,
wow, that's something that I did not know about.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, great guy.
Wow. Well, find it on Amazon. They can find you on Amazon as well, right?
Right.
Or they go to Staver, MikeStaver.com to buy your book.
I think you can buy it. I think it ultimately takes you to Amazon, because doesn't everything ultimately take you to Amazon?
So the book, again, is for Cowards. I just happen to have a personal signed copy.
There you go.
But having said that, and then you have your other book, which is...
Do You Know How to Shut Up?
Very good. I love the title.
Which, Bishop, you'll appreciate this story. The way that book got named is my parents had left church and they got to the restaurant where I was having lunch with them. And I said, Paul, my dad, said, "Hey, Mike, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm finishing up this book. Do you know how to I said, "I'm finishing this book, but I don't know a title for it." And he said, "I got it. I got the title." And I'm like, "Wow, thanks. What is it?" He said, "It's Do You Know How to Shut Up?" And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I'm telling you, our preacher does not know how to shut up." It's so funny. Oh, man.
Do they accuse you of that, Warner?
No, not usually. They enjoy seeing me in action, but sometimes I get a little engaged. Yeah.
I tell people all the time when meeting planners say, "Now we need to finish on time." I said, "Look, I'm pretty straightforward. All we have to do in this business is make our host look good and be on time. That's all we need to know, right? If we make our host look good and finish on time, we could be pretty good.
Yes.
If we were to close the show, because we're got 5 minutes left, and we promised 45 minutes. So if I was to ask you, what is the one, well, maybe two words of advice for those out there who are growing their speaking business, they're growing their coaching business, they're trying to gain popularity or leverage their expertise and become an influencer. What were the two things that you gentlemen would suggest that would be pieces of advice for them to close the show? Mike, I'll start with you first.
The first thing is stay in your lane. A lot of times I think people get too diffuse and want to be all things to all people, and it just doesn't work. Particularly people in our industry. Bishop, I'm sure you've seen this happen numerous times. But let's just talk to the audience that isn't in the speaking or coaching business. I think you need to get courageous enough to live in alignment with your purpose and your values. People don't do that. People are so worried about making the dollar, making people happy, that they don't with great humility say, this is the essence of who I am as a human being, as long as that isn't, a sociopath. This is the essence of who I am. And I'm going to manifest this in my work. I'm not going to be a chameleon so that all of you run to me. I'm going to have the courage to say, here's what I do. And then the second thing I think is to surround yourself with people who will speak the truth in love to you, that they will manifest in your life the kinds of accountability and love and concern that will give you the sense of truth that is necessary for any of us to influence others or move forward.
Very good advice.
I could not say it any better. Be authentically yourself.
Yes.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. And I'd like to close just by saying one of the, I work with speakers like yourself, Mike, with you, Warner, with other speakers from all over the world. And one of the commonalities that I find with the most successful speakers is genuineness. Mm-hmm. The more genuine and more authentic they are, and especially in how they lead, whether it be on the stage or in a room of one or of 500 or 1,000, seem to be the speakers that have the most influence and gain the most quickly with their reputation.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. Right. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much again. Paul, if you could hop back on and kindly show our last two where people can connect with us on Facebook and LinkedIn and all these wonderful social media platforms. That would be great. And thank you everybody who's tuned in today. And Coffee with Lisa will be returning in a few weeks with a special guest speaker again. And just keep an eye out for Facebook.com/LisaBFD to find out who that will be. Thanks again, gentlemen.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for having us.
Bye now.
Bye for now.